changing. Could I say something about Donald Trump's press conference yesterday?
Oh, please do.
It was absolutely bizarre. It was like being in a parallel universe. He clearly blamed President Zelensky for starting the war, saying that he had spent 3.5 years doing nothing. He disregarded and disrespected the Ukrainian constitution by saying that Zelensky using this as an objection to trading land. Well, he didn't have a problem with going to war and a war that killed tens of thousands of people. Let's be very, very clear for anyone who doesn't know. It was Russia who started this war with an illegal invasion. It was Russia who has wiped entire Ukrainian cities off the map and has murdered tens of thousands of Ukrainian civilians. Yet Donald Trump tells us that for the second time, not for the first time, that it was Zelensky somehow that started the war.
Hello and welcome to Frontline with me, Philip Ingram. Now, today we're privileged on day 1,268 of Vladimir Putin's special military operation or full-scale invasion of Ukraine to be speaking with Cormac Smith. Now, Cormac is an Irishman, but a former British diplomat to Ukraine. And you worked within the Ukrainian government and you specialise in communications. And you are a regular contributor on many different channels, including On the Brink. Cormac, welcome to Frontline.
Philip, it's an absolute pleasure to join you.
It's a pleasure to have you in the studio as well. Now, we've got an event happening this week in Alaska that is being pulled together at very short notice. And in fact, I was only reading today that it's going to be held in a US military Air Force base because everywhere else is booked up. It's holiday season. And we've, of course, I'm referring to Donald Trump meeting Vladimir Putin, supposedly discussing ceasefires and peace deals and everything else with Ukraine. What do you make of it?
It's very hard to know what to make of it, Philip. The first thing to say is it has been arranged with unholy haste. Normally, a summit of this kind would, if not weeks, would be months in the meeting with lots and lots of pre-meetings and so forth. This seems to have been arranged in less than a week, Donald Trump would have us believe. The second thing is it has been a principle for the last 3.5 years, nothing about Ukraine without Ukraine. And clearly, Ukraine is not invited. Volodymyr Zelensky is not invited to this. So it has very much the 1938 Munich conference feeling of great powers getting together to negotiate the fate of lesser powers. But by the day, the grounding of this event seems to be changing. Could I say something about Donald Trump's press conference yesterday?
Oh, please do.
It was absolutely bizarre. It was like being in a parallel universe. He clearly blamed President Zelensky for starting the war, saying that he had spent 3.5 years doing nothing. He disregarded and disrespected the Ukrainian constitution by saying that Zelensky using this as an objection to trading land. Well, he didn't have a problem with going to war and a war that killed tens of thousands of people. Let's be very, very clear for anyone who doesn't know. It was Russia who started this war with an illegal invasion. It was Russia who has wiped entire Ukrainian cities off the map and has murdered tens of thousands of Ukrainian civilians. Yet Donald Trump tells us that for the second time, not for the first time, that it was Zelensky somehow that started the war. And of course, the war would never have started had he been in power, etc., etc., etc.
And we've heard that before.
And we also had the amazing fiction that actually had Putin not tried to go through farmland, but had he merely kept his tanks on the road, he would have been in Kyiv in 4 hours. And it was only the American javelins, which, of course, Trump had given them, that saved Kyiv. Now, actually, I will admit that the Javelin anti-tank weapon played a huge part in it, as did the British NLAW. So, no, it was absolutely bizarre.
And part of the problem was the Russians didn't go off the routes because they were very muddy, and they stuck to the roads, which channeled them in different areas, and the Ukrainians used fantastic tactics. So, but this isn't the first time that Donald Trump has done this, and it's very clear that European leaders are worried because they're all getting together today, as we're talking about this. President Zelensky is with Chancellor Merz in Germany, I believe, and we're having a virtual conference with Merz, Zelensky, Starmer, and Macron from France, which J.D. Vance and Donald Trump are allegedly dialing into. Do you think the amount of effort that European leaders are putting in has European leaders concerned that Donald Trump is going to do something that is going to be very difficult to undo?
Philip, I most certainly hope that European leaders are concerned. We have heard a few statements coming out of Friedrich Merz and others about Ukrainian, the integrity of Ukrainian sovereignty and so forth. But, I've been saying for a year and a half, 2 years, that this was all going to come down to Europe. And it's very, very clear, looking at Donald Trump's press conference yesterday, it was like being transported back to that horrendous February ambush of Zelensky. It was the same language, and the same obvious that not only does Donald Trump, I would say on a personal level, care nothing for Ukraine, he has real animosity and disdain towards President Zelensky, and he cannot help this coming out. So it would seem to me that European leaders have been keeping their powder dry this week so far. We wait to see what comes out. I am hugely concerned because my fear is that whatever agreement, although Donald Trump is already trying to roll back expectations of what's happening in Alaska, saying that he's just going there to listen. But whatever sort of agreement or proposed agreement Donald Trump comes out with, it is going to be in Putin's favor. It is not going to be anything that President Zelensky or the Ukrainian people can or will accept. Now, my fear then is that that gives Trump the exit he wants to withdraw American armaments and American intelligence, this time probably for good. Now, can Europe fill that gap? No, not fully immediately. I think it's important, and you will know more about this. Europe has been stepping up the armaments it's being supplying. And if we look at the overall balance, Europe is now doing more than it was. But importantly, Ukraine has also been stepping up its own armaments manufacture with the aid of investment from various European countries. I don't know what the percentages are, but I doubt very, very much if we are in a position to fill an American gap. And that gap could come, I'm now fearing, very, very quickly. So this spells very, very tough times for Ukraine.
In the gap, I think there are 4 areas, and the gap is closing very quickly. We've got the Patriot air defense missiles that are American missiles. Now, there are stocks of them across Europe. Provided Donald Trump doesn't stop those being provided, then that can be fixed. They're important because they're the only missiles that can deal with the Kinzhal hypersonic missile that the Russians have got, and their intercontinental ballistic or their medium-range ballistic missiles, so it can deal with ballistic missiles. Second thing is, as you're saying, is intelligence. And it's early warning intelligence of launches of ballistic missiles and things that early warning allows the Ukrainians to save civilians who are being targeted. The third thing is spare parts for American equipment that is already in Ukraine. Now, Europe could step up and replace all of that, but that's a bigger effort, and it's better to continue the spare parts that are going in. And the fourth thing is the US defense industrial base when it comes to ammunition resupply, including artillery ammunition and everything else. But the European defense industrial base is stepping up rapidly and can fill that gap. So those gaps are closing, and therefore, as time goes on, it's going to become less and less important, apart from the intelligence bit with regard to the launch of the missiles. But it's clear, if we look at some of the statements that came out from Caroline Leavitt, the U.S. White House press secretary, she seems to have reined back from a lot of what Donald Trump said and talked about it, the meeting just being Donald Trump on receive. He's just listening. He's not planning to make any decisions and all the rest of it. Do you think it's not just European leaders that are worried, but some of his own staff are actually worried that he may go slightly off track?
I think Donald Trump himself may be worried. I mean, it's becoming increasingly clear that his special envoy, Witkoff, got the wrong end of the stick when he was in Moscow last week. And he came back with expectations that clearly the Russians were not willing to sign up to in terms of conceding land. Now, just before I came in, a very good contact of mine in Kyiv sent me a message that the Russian Federation Ministry of Foreign Affairs has just come out to say that the 4 oblasts and Crimea are part of the Russian constitution. Therefore, they cannot be traded. So vis-a-vis Trump's big words less than 24 hours ago about give and take, which were in themselves ridiculous, because what the Ukrainians give is more of their own sovereign land. And what they might take is some of their own sovereign land that has been stolen already. So it's not give and take. But the other thing that I've got to say in terms of exchanging land for peace, this is not just about land. This is not just about the resources on that land. This is about the people that live on that land. And infamously for 3.5 years, Russian soldiers have been plundering, torturing, murdering, raping. I spoke to, again, earlier this morning, just before I came in preparation, to a senior Ukrainian diplomat in The Hague. And I asked him what the latest figures were on war crimes being investigated. And it's over 181,000 war crimes being investigated now. And we probably don't know all of it because 20% of Ukraine is obviously under occupation. So it's any land that will be conceded, first and foremost, it's relegating the Ukrainian people that live on that land to the barbarism of Russian rule.
Well, there's so much in what you said there. With regard to the war crimes, Putin himself is an indicted war criminal, indicted by The Hague. Now, he's going to the United States. Do you think that there's any chance that Donald Trump will have him arrested and sent off to The Hague, as he potentially should do? From Putin's perspective, what do you think Putin's thinking about this meeting with Donald Trump? And again, from a diplomatic perspective, how unusual is it? And we're only getting this reported that actually it's only going to be Donald Trump and Vladimir Putin in a room talking to each other. No staff, no interpreters, no one else. They'll just be talking to each other. Is that usual?
Okay, Philip, you've asked me 3 questions. The answer to the first one is no. 100% emphatically no.
I knew there was an easy answer to that one.
There is no chance that he will be arrested. Secondly, this is a massive win for Vladimir Putin.
Yeah.
He has been taken in out of the cold. He has been invited onto American soil by the most, like it or not, the most powerful man on earth, formerly the head of our very much creaking rules-based order, into a summit to discuss the war in Ukraine without Ukraine. There's a very, very clear signal gone out to him. It's very, very clear, for whatever reason, that Donald Trump desperately wants Vladimir Putin to like him. Now, we can debate all day about the possible reasons for that, but it is clear he wants Vladimir Putin to like him. Whether Vladimir Putin likes or will ever like Donald Trump, or whether he simply continues to play him like a fiddle, is something else that I will put to you. So your third question was, how, in diplomacy terms, how normal is it that this meeting should go ahead without an interpreter or without anybody else in the room? It's absolutely unusual. It is just not the way we do things, and this has echoes, of course, of the Helsinki summit in 2018, where famously, in front of the world's press, Donald Trump came out and said that he believed Vladimir Putin over his own security services, and didn't see any reason why he wouldn't believe him. So this is of huge concern, but the only thing that we can hope, I mean, the key this week is that Europe really stands up and Europe finds its backbone. One, we have a moral obligation to support Ukraine, and if the rules-based order that has persisted for 80 years, and yes, we know it's not perfect, But we know that if it stands for one thing above all else, it is that might does not make right. And that principle of might makes right is what is written and insinuated right through every morsel, every atom of this Alaska summit between Putin and Trump, and in everything that Trump is saying. So I'm afraid America is lost. It really is down to us in Europe, with a few other key allies such as the Canadians, the Japanese, the South Koreans, the Australians and New Zealanders. I could probably name one or two others, but we really need to find our backbone, because it's not just a moral obligation, Philip. If we don't get this right, this wolf will come to our door.
Yeah.
I've been saying this for over 3 years. I have no doubt about it.
Yeah, well, it's interesting you mentioned Japan and Korea and elsewhere. If we look at Putin's history, he's violated every bilateral treaty that Russia's signed since Ukraine's independence in 1992. He's undermined. He's ignored the Budapest Memorandum of 1994, Friendship Memorandum of 1997, border treaties of 2003, which all guaranteed Ukrainian territorial integrity, and now he has invaded a sovereign country. What are the global implications if Donald Trump tries to give away sovereign territory because a larger country has decided it wants to take it and invaded and stolen it?
The global implications are massive. First and foremost, and close to home for Donald Trump, it is a green light to other despots and dictators around the world that we are back unequivocally to an area or to an era where might does make right. And first and foremost, it's an invitation, I would say, for China to invade Taiwan. Sorry, I had a mental block there, Phil. Thank you for heading me out. Yeah, it's an absolute invitation there, but it's a green light to other dictators around the world. But I go back to the point of the rules-based order. And I've been challenged for the last 3.5 years when I mentioned the rules-based order. I didn't know what I didn't really know. I wasn't really aware of what the rules-based order was till I went to Ukraine. Not because I wasn't educated. I've been a student of history all my life with a degree in politics and economics from a good school. But we've taken things so much for granted growing up in the West. It was the Ukrainians, when I went out to Kyiv to work for the Ukrainian government in 2016, who taught me the importance of the rules-based order. And like me, they're clear that it has not been perfect over the last 80 years, but it probably has given us the greatest period of peace, prosperity, and safety that the world has ever known. And as I said earlier in this conversation to you, Philip, yes, we've made mistakes, but the rules-based order is an aspiration. And it is an aspiration that we in I will call it the civilized countries must never let go of. And if it means one thing and one thing alone, it is that might does not make right. You simply because you have the strength, you cannot go in, plunder, pillage, and rape a neighboring country and take what you want. Very much the language coming out of Donald Trump. In fact, he has gone as far recently as to say, well, Russia has fought hard for those lands. Maybe they should get to keep them.
Yeah.
I mean, this is crazy stuff.
Oh, completely crazy stuff. The other crazy stuff that we hear all the time is that Ukraine is such a corrupt country that Zelensky stole the election. It wasn't truly democratic. You've worked inside the Ukrainian government. How much does corruption influence what goes on and the decision-making Ukrainian government? And was Zelensky properly elected from a democratic perspective?
Right. Let me answer. You've asked me two questions again. So the first one is I've worked with the Ukrainians, and I, apart from working with the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, I worked with several other agencies and was invited to speak at different conferences. And I nearly always opened up by saying, Ukraine, and this was 2016 to 2018, before the further invasion, I nearly always opened up by saying that Ukraine fights a war on two fronts. She fights a war against the aggressor Russia outside, and she fights a war against those who who would rape and pillage her own people on the inside.
Mm-hmm.
I was never opposed on this. It was at the heart of everything I did.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, if I went to work when I was there with another ministry, I had to demonstrate to my boss, Her Majesty's Ambassador, that actually what I was doing fed into the reform and the anti-corruption process, because that's the pot of money that I was paid out of. I helped coin a phrase when I was out there that Ukraine had made more progress since the Maidan revolution ended in 2014 than in all the years back to 1991. And that was demonstrably clear in terms of so many areas of reform. What is really impressive is that in the teeth of this genocidal war since 2022, Ukraine has continued to make progress with reforms and in dealing with corruption. And no less than the EU recognized this last year when they signed off on the accession papers, the main criteria for which was that Ukraine was demonstrably dealing with corruption. So, yes, corruption is still a problem in Ukraine. It's very much part of the Soviet oligarchic.
But then tell me which European country doesn't have corruption underpinning a lot of the political structures?
The thing that drives me mad, Philip, is we constantly seek to apply higher standards to Ukraine than we would apply to ourselves.
Yeah.
There is corruption in Britain. There is corruption in Ireland. There is corruption, as you say, in every European country. The Ukrainians are dealing with it.
Yeah.
You know, to go back to the recent demonstrations 3 weeks ago, I would say that, Zelensky was clumsy. There were protests. They were peaceful. He listened. He changed his mind. That is, and I've spoken to a lot of Ukrainian friends about this who are not necessarily Zelensky fans, but this is Ukrainian democracy in action. The reason for those reforms was there was evidence that the two, NABU and the other body for dealing with corruption, were infiltrated by the Kremlin. And there were many cases where people who had been investigated absconded and got out of the country before they could be arrested because it was believed they were being tipped off from the inside. So let's be very clear why Zelensky did that. Did he do it in a clumsy way? I think so, and many of my Ukrainian friends think so. So on to your second question. Was Zelensky elected? Zelensky was elected with 73% of the popular vote in an election which was closely invigilated by Western observers and judged to be true and fair. I don't think there is another Western leader who could dream of getting 73% of the popular vote. A Jew of Russian origin, by the way, some Nazi.
Well, yes, and I'm glad you used that word because a lot of what we're seeing and what's coming down to at the moment is an information war that seems to be going on between Ukraine and Russia, but also the United States and Europe, and all of them working together. You're a communications expert. This is your area of expertise. Who's winning in the information domain?
Yeah, I mean, we're really not doing well enough. I mean, I see far too much evidence that, that Russia is, if not winning, has the upper hand and keeps getting those narratives out. I've been studying Russian disinformation as part of Russian hybrid warfare strategy since early 2016 in preparation for going out to Kyiv. Remember, as a special communication advisor to the foreign ministers. So it's something I've really had to understand, and my understanding of that deepened very much when I was out there, and I've continued to study it. So we're not doing well enough. Russia invests a huge amount of money into it. I'm afraid what we're seeing now from the American right, we're seeing a greater working in parallel between the far right in America and the far right in other countries, because of course these are the very areas that Russian disinformation and the Kremlin tends to invest into, and so I think we need to do an awful lot better. It was one that just interesting, going away from Ukraine for a moment. It was last year, there was some research done on the Irish internet and Irish social media. and it was noted that around 50% of far-right posts
Yeah.
on Irish social media were emanating from the United States.
Yeah.
A further 20% were emanating from the United Kingdom,
Mm-hmm.
the mainland, with a smaller amount from Russia. But one actually needs to ask, we know the Russians are very sophisticated, how much of that 50% originating from the United States was Russia behind in the first place?
Well, yes, we could get into Irish political social media posts and discuss parties who seem to have them emanating out of Serbia and where that could be as well, but we'll not do that. Finally, and briefly, I've managed to get you dialed into the discussion that's happening between Donald Trump, the leaders of the Coalition of the Willing, President Zelensky. They're all on the line. You've got the opening piece that's in there to say what's going to happen. You have to get it done briefly. What are you saying to them?
Europe, this is your moment. It is literally your money and guns today, or your daughters and sons tomorrow.
Cormac, it's been a real pleasure talking to you today on Times Radio Frontline.
Philip, it's always a pleasure.
Thank you. You've been watching Frontline with me, Philip Ingram. If you'd like access to exclusive content, please subscribe to Times Radio membership and watch us on YouTube. But you can now get us as a podcast wherever you get your podcasts from. And don't forget, you can also listen to Times Radio for the latest updates on global affairs and read about them at thetimes.com. Thank you.